The Philippines were a Spanish province for more than 300 years and are called after King Philip II of Spain, 1556 to 1598. Hunter-gatherers were the first inhabitants of the Philippines. However, people began to learn how to cultivate between 3000 and 2000 BC. They raised domesticated animals as well as grains. Ferdinand Magellan later traveled across the Pacific in 1521. He arrived there and annexed the Philippines to Spain. Lapu-Lapu was one of the chiefs who refused to comply with Magellan's demand that they submit to Humabon. To destroy him, Magellan led a force. The Spanish men, however, dispersed and Magellan perished. It wasn't until Miguel Lopez de Legazpi's expedition in 1565 that the Spanish established a presence in the Philippines by fortifying Cebu. The Spaniards eventually arrived in Luzon in 1571. The city of Intramuros, later known as Manila, was constructed here and ultimately served as the Philippine nation's capital.
Luzon was taken over by the Spanish conquistador who marched inland. They established a feudal order. Filipino labor was used on enormous estate owned by the Spaniard. Conquistadors were followed by peers who led the Filipino to the Catholic faith. Additionally, the peers constructed colleges and universities. Chinese export to the Philippines each year include items like silk, porcelain, and lacquer. They were retained to Mexico from there. The years of the Philippines passed without incident until the British took control of Manila in 1762. In accordance with the stipulation of the Treaty of Paris, which was signed in 1763, they held it for 2 years until giving it back in 1764. Philippines during the 19th century. There was an uprising in Cavite in 1872, but it was put down impromptly. However, a writer by the name of Jose Rizal contributed to the growth of nationalist sentiment. In 1861 to 1896, he produced 2 books that paint and flame of nationalism, Noli Me Tangere, Touch Me Not, and El Filibusterismo. The Filibusterer, La Liga Filipina was a group started by Jose Rizal in 1892 that advocate reform as opposed to revolution. Rizal was consequently detained and sent into the exile to the Bitan, Mindanao.
In the meantime, Andres Bonifacio founded the Katipunan, a more radical group. They started to revolt in August 1896. Jose Rizal was executed on December 30, 1896, notwithstanding the fact that he had not supported the revolution as been claimed. However, the revolution grew and his execution did not but inflame Filipino sentiment. The USA and Spain conflict then broke out in 1898. The Spanish fleet was routed by the Americans on April 30, 1898 in Manila Bay. On June 12, their commander Emilio Aguinaldo proclaimed the Philippines independent. However, Spain gave the USA control on the Philippines as a part of peace agreement. The American had invasion strategy. On February 4, 1899, hostilities between the Filipinos and American troops in Manila broke out. After Aguinaldo's capture in 1902, the Filipino-American War continued.
The 20th century in the Philippines. Paternalistic American control was exhibited in the Philippines. Their program was known as benevolent assimilation. The Filipinos were supposed to be Americanized, but they never quite managed it. But they did some good too. A ship the Thomas carried a large number of American professors who contribute to an improvement in literacy in the Philippines. The Philippines became a Commonwealth and achieved partial independence in 1935. President Manuel Quezon took office. The Philippines would achieve full independence in 1945 as promised by the USA. Japan, whoever launched an attack on the US fleet at Pearl Harbor in December 1941. Japanese troops invade the Philippines on December 10, 1941. Manila was taken in January 2, 1941. All of the Philippines has been under Japanese control by May 6, 1942. But in October 1944, American troops went back to the Philippines. Manila was retaken in February 1945.
Marcos proclaimed martial law on September 21, 1972. Curfew was imposed. Congress was halted, and opposition figures were detained. The regime of Ferdinand Marcos was credibly corrupt, and Marcos and his allies amassed wealth. Later, in 1980, opposition leader Benigno Aquino fled to the United States into exile. On August 21, 1983, he came back and was shot. Aquino became a martyr, and his assassination infuriated the Filipino people. Elections were called by Marcos in February 1986. The opposite banded together behind Cory Aquino, Benigno's widow. Marcos announced his win, a clear case of electoral fraud. Ordinary folks flocked to the streets to support Cory Aquino, who also declared victory. Marcos' supporters abandoned him, and he submitted to the inevitable and fled into exile.
Fidel Ramos was elected president in 1992. He made improvement to the Philippine infrastructure, particularly the availability of power. After industry was privatized, the economy grew more quickly. However, the Philippine economy experienced a crisis at the end of 1990s. Joseph Estrada, also known as ERAP, was elected president in 1998. Estrada was impeached in November 2000. After being charged with corruption, Estrada wasn't found guilty. Despite this, opponent of him protested, and the military withdrew its backing. Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, the vice president, took over after Estrada was forced to resign. In 2004, she was re-elected. Philippines in the 21st century. Today, the Philippines is still poor, but things are changing. Since 2010, the Philippine economy has grown at about 6% a year. Today, this is reason to be optimistic about the future. Meanwhile, in 2016, in the Philippines launched its first satellites. It was called Diwata 1. There were 106 million people living in the Philippines in 2020.